You ever have one of those weekends that start out normal, and then somehow you end up standing in your own driveway surrounded by flashing police lights, while your neighbor accuses you of grand theft? Yeah, that was my Saturday. I just pulled into my gravel drive up by Pine Ridge Lake. My old pickup was still humming from the ride when I saw 3 patrol cars parked crooked in front of my cabin, their red and blue lights bouncing off the trees. And right in the middle of it all stood her, Linda Carmichael, the self-appointed queen of the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. Arms crossed, lips pursed, chin high, like she was about to sentence someone to exile. Only this time, the someone was me. "There he is," she shouted before I could even turn off the engine. "That's the man who's been stealing from our community." I caught him red-handed. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Stealing? Me? I was still half-dazed from the drive, staring at my empty truck bed that, just 2 hours ago, had been stacked with groceries, tools, and a generator I'd bought to fix up the cabin I'd inherited from my uncle. The lead officer, a tall guy with a mustache and that tired look of someone who's seen too many ridiculous calls, stepped forward. "Sir, are you the owner here?" "Yes, officer," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "This cabin's mine. Been in my family for decades. I bought all that stuff this morning. I've still got the receipts." Linda's eyes narrowed to slits. "He's lying," she snapped. "That cabin belongs to the HOA. He's been squatting here for months, probably running some kind of illegal business. Now, before you start thinking this woman's just crazy, let me tell you, this feud didn't start today. It had been brewing for weeks. See, the first time I met Linda, I was driving by her fancy lakefront house with a bed full of lumber. She ran out in heels, waving her arms like she was stopping traffic. "Excuse me," she called. "Where do you think you're going with all that?" I rolled my window down, trying to be polite. "Just heading up to my uncle's old cabin, fixing it up a bit." She leaned in like she was sniffing for lies. "There are no approved structures past this point. Everything up there falls under HOA jurisdiction, and I haven't approved any construction." I told her the truth, that my cabin sat outside the HOA boundary. I even showed her a certified map, but she waved it off like I'd handed her a forged passport. "Maps can be faked," she'd said. "Don't think I won't be watching." And oh, she did. Every Friday evening after that, I'd find her standing at the end of her driveway with binoculars and a clipboard, like some suburban spy. She'd yell across the road, asking invasive questions. "Awful lot of canned food, don't you think? You planning for the apocalypse?" I ignored her for weeks, but she just escalated. Fake violation notes on my windshield. Anonymous complaints to the county inspector. Even tried to rally neighbors into a community watch to keep an eye on the squatter. The night before the cops showed up, I'd made my biggest supply run yet. Over $2,000 worth of stuff for winter. Linda must have been foaming at the mouth, because she actually stood in the road and forced me to stop. "This is getting ridiculous," she said, her tone somewhere between a kindergarten teacher and a drill sergeant. "No legitimate cabin owner needs this much equipment. You're hoarding or hiding something illegal. I'm giving you one last warning before I take official action." I just sighed. Official action for what? Fixing my own roof? "Linda, you don't have any authority out here. The HOA stops half a mile down the road." She smirked. "Not for long. We're voting next week to extend our jurisdiction. Once it passes, you'll have to go through us for everything." I didn't bother arguing. I was tired. I drove off. But she wasn't bluffing, at least not in her own mind. The next morning, I worked for hours installing new shelves and setting up the generator. Around noon, I decided to grab lunch in town. Left the truck in the driveway, half full of supplies I hadn't unloaded yet. 2 hours later, I came back to the circus I told you about. Police lights, empty truck, and Linda playing detective. While the sergeant was questioning me, I pulled out my phone. "Officer," I said, "I think I can clear this up real quick." See, after her earlier antics, I'd installed cameras around the cabin. I scrolled through the footage, heart pounding. And there it was, clear as daylight. Linda's shiny white SUV pulling into my driveway. She hops out, glances around, then starts hauling boxes from my truck into her car, one trip after another, 6 in total. Food, tools, propane tanks, all of it. When the sergeant saw the footage, his eyebrows shot up. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you told dispatch you witnessed him stealing from his neighbors. But this video shows you removing items from his truck." Linda stammered. I was securing evidence." He's been suspicious for weeks. The sergeant's voice went cold. You took property from his vehicle on his land and called 911 to report him? That's not securing evidence. That's theft. Her face went from red to pale to something in between. I was protecting the community, she yelled. Another officer stepped in. Ma'am, we checked. This property isn't under your HOA. You had no right to touch anything here. I showed them my receipts, timestamps matching the video. The sergeant gave a curt nod, turned to his team, and said, Escort Miss Carmichael to her residence and retrieve the stolen goods. Every single thing she took goes back. Now, this is the part I'll admit I enjoyed a little too much. We all followed the convoy to Linda's perfect little house. Manicured lawn, white shutters, garden gnomes in military formation. Her husband opened the garage door, and there it was, my stuff, neatly stacked like a prize collection. When the officers started moving boxes back to my truck, her husband just kept mumbling. I told her to leave that man alone, while Linda threw out every excuse she could think of. I thought it was abandoned. I thought he was a criminal. The HOA bylaws give me authority, but it was no use. The sergeant didn't even raise his voice. He didn't have to. Ma'am, you're being cited for theft of property over $2,000 and for filing a false police report. You could see it hit her like a brick. A felony? But I'm the HOA president. Not for long. One of her board members, Janet, I think, cut in. We're calling an emergency meeting tonight. You've humiliated this community for the last time. As if things couldn't get worse, another officer returned after running her record. Ma'am, looks like this isn't your first rodeo. 2 prior citations for false reporting and 1 for harassment. That was it. Linda just crumbled. All that arrogance drained right out of her. She mumbled something about needing her lawyer and stumbled inside, leaving her husband standing there with a look that said, I told you so. When it was all over, the sergeant handed me his card. You'll need to come by Monday to file your report. With the value of the theft and her history, she's looking at serious consequences. And just as I was getting into my truck, I heard her voice from inside the house, cracked, desperate. 5 years? $10,000. The door slammed, and that was the last I saw of her. Driving back down the lake road that night, I couldn't help but laugh. Not out of spite, but out of sheer disbelief. All of it because one woman couldn't accept that the world didn't revolve around her HOA. I guess there's a lesson in there somewhere, about control, boundaries, and the kind of people who can't stand not being in charge. But mostly, it just reminded me how fragile peace can be when ego gets involved. So yeah, that's how I ended up proving my innocence with a security cam and watching a neighborhood tyrant lose her crown. Now I've got my quiet weekends back, my supplies where they belong, and a great story to tell by the campfire. But let me ask you this, what would you have done? Would you have gone toe-to-toe with someone like Linda, or try to keep the peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know where you stand on this one.